Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to throw the body of a teapot. I'm going to make a pretty small little teapot. You can make a bigger one if you want to, but mine's not going to be super huge. So to throw the body of a teapot, it's basically like a bowl, but then it closes off, right? And you're going to have to make a lid for it later. So let's clean this off here. And we're going to wedge this up a bit. Sometimes I like to wake the clay up by wedging it with just a few times before I put it on the wheel head. I'm going to make a little baby teapot here. Alright. Same centering technique, but when you open it up, you're going to do more of a bowl shape. Whoops, gotta seal it. So muffin shape, not centered yet. Feels like it, but it's not until you pull it up and push it down a couple times. And go down into your muffin shape again, just to check it out. This is sort of how I see if it's centered. I go back into this shape and I can really feel it. I feel like it is, but just for a good measure, I'm going to take it up and down a couple more times. Alright, it's definitely centered. Slow it down, open it up. I'm going to leave myself a lot of room at the base because I want to trim a nice little foot in my teapot. Teapots have really round bellies, and so I like to give them a nice foot so that they feel like they're lifting up off the table a little bit. So open it up like a bowl. And then I'm going to center my wall, kind of in the bowl shape. Bring it up when I get to the rim there. I'm going to compress my base a couple times. You notice I did that 6 times. 6 is the magic number. Alright, going to compress my wall one more time before I pull it up. So this is a tricky form because you want to pull your piece up, but by the time you get up here you still need clay to close it off at the top. So what I do is I make it a pretty thick form and I throw it up this way, and then I close it off a little bit, and then I push the belly out, and then I contain the top. So I'll show you how I do that. Alright, so I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to have a little bit of a curve to it, but then pretty immediately I'm going to start coming straight up and in. So I don't want that rim to get out of control and flare out, because I'm ultimately coming back in with it. It's really hard to bring a form that has flared out back in. Okay, I'm going to grab that clay that's down there at the base, get it up into the wall, and then when I get up to my rim, I'm pushing harder with my outside hand. See how I'm closing it off a little bit? It starts to go towards the center. That's what we're looking for. Compress your rim always. Okay, I'm going to make one more pull up to get some of that clay in the base into the wall, and then I'm going to belly out the inside. One more pull. Again, I'm going to take it in here. And I can't close it off too much because I still have to put my hand in there. I only close it off when I'm ready, when my hand no longer needs to go in there. Okay. So I'm going to get some of that clay out. Now when you start throwing bigger vessels that you're going to be closing off where you can't get your hand down in there, they have tools for that. You can buy a sponge that's on the end of a stick. That takes some practice to use because you have to control the stick. Alright, so now I'm going to put a little bit of water on the inside again. And I'm going to belly out the belly. So I'm pushing harder on the inside. And I'm following my finger with the rib tool for compression. You can make your teapot any shape you want to make it. It doesn't have to be a round bellied teapot. I'm just showing you how to do this form because it's not something that we've done yet, or you're not mimicking another form because you're closing it off at the top. Okay, so now that I've got the belly, I might want to just with one hand go in just for fun and look at my silhouette and push it out a little bit and give it a little bit more of a rounded bottom there. Then I might go through with my rib tool one more time and just compress what I've done. This would be like a 1 cup teapot or little teacups maybe. Alright, I'm going to get the water out of there. You notice that I'm just putting 2 fingers down in there instead of my whole hand. I don't want to bump the rim there. Flaring my thumb out so it doesn't get in the way. And then if I'm careful, I can put my little finger mark in the bottom. Alright, so now I want to bring this in a little bit more, just a little bit, maybe like another ½ an inch in. And then I'm going to show you how to throw a lid to fit in there. Alright, so make sure that you get this wet just a little bit. You don't want a bunch of water back in there because you just dug it out of the bottom there. So this is a technique where you're going to kind of use your fingertips instead of your whole hand. So I'm going to just use my fingertips like this, and I'm going to tease it in to the middle. And there's different ways of making lids and the flanges that go on lids. You can put the flange on your pot, or you can put the flange on your lid. So with this one, if you don't put a flange, which is like the little area that dips in, that your lid sits in, if you don't put it on your teapot, you have to put it on your lid. So for this teapot, I'm not going to throw a flange in here, and then my lid will have the flange that slides into it to keep it secure. But I will show you how to throw a teapot with a flange, or a vase with a flange. If you want to put a lid on anything, there needs to be some type of flange. Okay, so I just kind of curve that in just a little bit. Oops, my little strap got in the way. And then I'm going to take my rib tool and I'm just going to do a little bit of shaping and compressing. Not too much because I don't want to collapse it. Just enough to kind of get the excess water off and shape it a bit. Okay, and then I'm going to cut my, gotta get rid of that strappy. I'm going to cut that excess clay off the bottom. Get rid of that. And I'm going to slowly peel it away. And flip it over. And then I'm going to cut it off the wheel head. Always clean my wire tool first. There's always something on it. Slide it under. Get the claw. Slide it and lift it up. Now I'm going to show you how to measure the opening for a lid. So I'm going to throw the lid next, but I need the flange for the lid to fit inside this gap. So the way that you do that is that you take, this is called a caliper here, and it has the measurement of these 2 points is the same as the distance between these 2 points, and that you'll see how why that's important later. So I'm going to go ahead and put that inside, and I want it to almost touch. Okay, and then I'm going to tighten this little bolt here so it stays put, and I'm going to check it one more time just to make sure it didn't move. And then I'm going to keep this. Don't let anyone mess with your calipers while you're making your lid, okay? All right, I'm going to move this again, and then I'm going to throw a lid. Now again, this lid is going to have a flange on it. And the technique that you're going to want to use when you're throwing a lid is called throwing off the hump. So what that means is that you're going to have a lump of clay that you've centered, but you're not going to throw with the whole thing. So I'm just going to, don't wedge on your wheel like I'm doing. I'm just trying to be quick here. All right, so I've got this bigger piece of clay than I need. I'm going to center it. I'm going to seal it. And I'm going to make my muffin. Pull it up and down a couple times. Make my muffin again. My hands going up and down the side. Alright, then I really only need about this much clay. So I'm going to kind of indent my hand just a little bit, just so I know. And then I'm going to really make sure that top part is centered. Doesn't really matter anymore if this is centered. I mean, it should be, but if it's a little wobbly, that's okay. What you're really focused on is this top piece. Making sure that's centered. Alright, so we're going to throw, it's going to look like this. It's going to be an upside down lid. So the bottom of this is going to be the top of the lid, and then what you're going to, the wall you're going to throw is going to be the flange. Okay, so to do this, we have to open it up. And there's a lot of trimming that goes into making a lid too. So I'm going to open it up only to the inside of the flange. This is where I need to start measuring. So the outside of the flange needs to fit inside these 2 points. So I opened that up a little bit too much, but that's okay because I can always bring it in. Just kind of lean my wall in a little bit there. And so the opening of this is the inside of the flange, so that looks like it's going to work. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is, and this is the tricky part, is that you're going to have to divide this wall with your index finger. And just go slow when you're doing this. I'm always triangulating. And I want plenty of clay on the outside. I don't want that to be too thin. I'm going to compress this wall a little bit. So this part is going to be the lip of your lid, and this is the flange. So again, I'm dividing the wall and making sure I have plenty of clay on either side. Your flange can bevel in a bit. In fact, it's good if it does a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to compress my flange. And I'm also going to compress the lip of my lid. I'm not ready to shape that yet. I just want it to be nice and even. So see this little moat here? This is where the top of your teapot goes. So if your teapot jets out and is quite round, then this curve here can't be sharp. It has to kind of go out, flare out a little bit. So let's check the distance here. So the inside of this, if you want it to fit snugly, the inside of this has to be right here. So it looks like I'm close, but I have to bring it in just a smidge. So to do that, I just want to kind of stick my finger in there and push in a little bit. Okay, and then bevel this in just a bit, and then compress that rim. And then I'm going to check that again, and it looks like it's perfect. Always keep checking because you're moving that clay constantly. Okay, and then compress the bottom here. It's the inside of your lid here. Okay, and now I need to flare this out a bit so that it matches the arch of my teapot body. And just take a peek at your teapot body for a second and memorize that arch. Whoops. Get rid of that little divot. Okay, so I'm going to use my fingertips again. And I'm going to just kind of slowly pull this out. I don't want it to get too thin, but I want my teapot to fit pretty snug. The lid to fit pretty snug on the top of the teapot. And then the top of the teapot you can trim and carve and add a handle and do all sorts of things that will give your teapot quite a bit of character. This is just the technical stuff to make it functional. We haven't gotten into really the look of it yet. Okay, I'm going to check it one more time, maybe get rid of the water in here so I can really see where that edge is. Stop the wheel. Put the calipers down in there. It is so perfect. Get rid of my little caliper mark. Okay, and then compress your rim here. And then one thing you can do that will help with trimming later is that you can take your finger and you can kind of put a little bit of a divot in there and then push that clay down. And you got to cut this off so that you don't cut off the tip of your lid. So you have to pay attention to how deep this goes. And then with your finger out here, you got to push that clay down even further than that. And then that's where you're going to cut it off on the wheel. Okay. And then you put your wire tool in that divot you just created and slowly turn it on, pull it through, and then use your clamps or your claw. Slide your claw into that area and slide it off, and there's your lid. Okay, with the rest of this clay, I'm going to show you how to throw a spout. Spouts are a little bit challenging too because you have to do something called collaring. It's a new technique. Let's get this clay recentered and maybe a little bit taller. So when you're working on these pieces to your teapot, always keep your body nearby because you want to make sure that it's aesthetically going to go with it, right? I'm going to pull this up one more time, make sure it's 100% centered. Okay, so the body of your teapot is about this big. So the spout is going to come up and kind of curve up, and the tippy top of your spout has to be above the water line of the top of your teapot. Because if you fill up that teapot and the spout opening is below the water line, then the water will spill out of it. So it has to be higher and arched up higher than that. So get a sense, looking at your teapot, how big your spout needs to be. So my spout really only needs to be about that big, and maybe at the base this wide. And I usually cut off part of the base anyways. So we're gonna just throw a shape that looks like that with a little opening in it. Okay, so we're going to open it up, and I'm not going to throw all the way down to the bottom here. I don't need all that clay. I'm still throwing off the hump. So I'm going to open up a base. Again, the inside of this opening is about the size of the teapot where it's going to connect to the teapot. So I don't really need to get any bigger than that. Notorious for putting my sponge in weird places. Okay, so I'm going to center my wall, and when I do that, I'm really going to lean in. I'm going to make sure that I'm not flaring out at all. So I'm creating a little bit of a beveled shape here. I'm leaning in, because ultimately that's where I'm going with this. Compressing the base doesn't matter because you're going to cut it off anyways to attach it to your teapot. All that matters is that this is leaning in and that you have enough clay here to throw up. Okay, so now I'm going to throw up, but as I'm throwing up, I'm going to be pushing in as much as I can here, and then I'm going to do something called collaring that I'll show you. Okay, so I'm using more of my fingertips here again because I'm dealing with smaller amounts of clay. Going pretty slow. And I'm just pulling up. And see how that's kind of closing off at the top there. I don't want to completely close it off yet because I have to get my hand down in there again to make a couple more pulls. So I'll show you how to do that later. Okay, so I've got my fingertips down in there again. I'm slowly pulling up, making my wall thinner. Compressing my rim. Okay, now I'm going to move into the collaring part. So make sure it's nicely lubricated on the outside. And you're going to collar it. You're going to put your hand around, kind of like you're choking it a little bit. And you're going to slowly move up. You have to do this slow or you're going to see this weird wrinkle in your piece if you're not careful. And I'm using my whole hand and my fingertips to slowly collar the clay up. See how I'm kind of guiding it with my fingertips. Make sure you have enough water there. Okay, now I'm going, before I close it off, I'm going to do one more little pull here, just with my fingertips. And I'm pushing it with my right hand into. Compress my rim. I usually cut the rim off later and give it a different tip to it, but I still want it to stay compressed. And I'm not going to give it the shape that I want it to have yet because my teapot spout obviously isn't going to stick straight out. I want it to have some curve to it, but I wait until it gets set up a little bit before I do that. And it's sort of lost its moisture and it's before it's leather hard, I will go in and mess with it a little bit. Now I'm throwing with my pinky and my thumb here, because this becomes very delicate. And you never want to do this too fast, because it takes a while for the clay to kind of compress together and not get twisted up on itself. Okay, so I'm pretty much done with this. One more little push. One more little, give it another ½ inch height if I can. Okay, then I'm going to decide where I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to create a little bit of a groove there. And again, it doesn't matter what the base looks like because you're going to cut it off. Put my wire tool in the groove, spin it around, pull it through, pick it up with my claw, and transport it over. Come on in. Hello. Hi.
Yeah. Hi there, Rick.
How's it
I just
going?
learned that you were here.
Yeah.
And,
Hey, can you do me a quick favor?
Sure.
Can you stop the record button?
Oh, funny. I'm so glad I gave you needed me. So I turned off it's this whole thing with the alarm, but it all worked out.
It's
Yeah.
right on the top red right there.
Top right.
Right next to the off.
Right here.
Their little red button. Right next to off.
Golly, I can't say.
Right there. One down from there. Yeah.